Why does life feel loud even when nothing seems truly wrong? Pause for a moment. Beneath that surface calm, there is a quiet pressure you rarely name. Thoughts repeating in silence. Expectations you carry without ever choosing. A constant sense of urgency, even though no one is pushing you. In the teachings of the Buddha, suffering does not last because pain is too great. It endures because attachment continues quietly and endlessly. This video does not invite you to add anything new or force yourself to be more positive. It gently invites you to reduce, to quietly remove what is leaking your inner peace. Right now, take 3 slow seconds. Observe the noise moving in your mind and chest. There is no need to fix it. Just see it. When awareness begins, the weight slowly starts to loosen. 1. Stop feeding energy thieves. There is a kind of exhaustion that does not come from doing too much, but from giving to the wrong places. You still wake up. You still try to be kind. You still listen. You still show up. Yet by the end of the day, the light inside you feels dimmer. In daily life, energy thieves rarely appear as obvious dangers. They may be familiar faces, conversations that never truly end, relationships where your presence is taken but never returned. In the teachings of the Buddha, compassion does not mean abandoning yourself. Kindness does not require you to always be available. There is a quiet misunderstanding that if we do not endure, we become selfish. But wisdom points in the opposite direction. You can keep a compassionate heart without draining yourself. You can step back without carrying resentment. Imagine an oil lamp burning in an empty room. No one sits there. No one is warmed. Yet the flame continues to consume itself. This is what happens when your energy flows toward places where it is not respected. You listen endlessly. You give endlessly. And the light within you slowly fades. Not because you are weak, but because you forgot to protect the flame. Buddhism does not ask you to confront or cut things off loudly. It simply invites you to see clearly. Suffering begins not when others take, but when you keep offering what is harming you. There is a very simple practice. Before responding, pause. Take 1 slow breath. Listen to your body. Is it tightening or softening? That sensation is wordless wisdom. As you exhale, imagine gently closing an invisible door with kindness. No anger, no explanation, just quiet clarity. Ask yourself whether you are giving from fullness or from fear of being misunderstood. When you stop feeding energy thieves, something unexpected happens. Patience returns. The mind grows clearer, and peace, though quiet, becomes deeper. 2. Stop explaining your existence. There is another kind of exhaustion that does not come from relationships outside of you, but from within. You explain your choices. You justify your pace of living. You try to make others understand that you deserve to exist this way. In the teachings of the Buddha, suffering arises when the ego becomes hungry for recognition. When you speak too much about yourself, peace quietly begins to leave. Recall a moment when you were misunderstood. In that instant, the mind immediately wants to correct the story, to explain, to prove. But pause for 1 breath. Inhale slowly, and as you exhale, allow the need to defend yourself to dissolve without words. In Buddhism, truth does not need agreement in order to exist. It is like a mountain standing still between heaven and earth. It does not need to explain its height. It does not try to convince the valley below. It simply stands, grounded and silent. When you stop explaining, you do not disappear. On the contrary, you become clearer, less fragmented. Energy no longer leaks through every sentence. Your presence begins to carry weight. Others may understand you less, but they will feel you more. Carry this silence with you into the next lesson. When you stop explaining your existence, you begin to reclaim the energy that has long been scattered. And from that place, a deeper kind of peace starts to form within you. Let that quiet lead you back to your natural breath. No validation needed, no praise required, just you and the fullness of this living moment. This is the ground where healing begins, quietly and enduringly. 3. In comparison disguised as growth. There is a habit that has become very common in modern life. You look at someone else's journey and call it motivation. You follow their success to remind yourself to try harder. Yet beneath the surface, after each comparison, the mind grows restless and unsettled. In the teachings of the Buddha, comparison is not awareness. It is a movement of attention away from where you are. When your gaze rests on another person's path, you step away from your own breath. A flower does not bloom by looking at the flower beside it. It blooms when there's enough sunlight, enough water, and enough time. In the same way, each person carries their own causes, conditions, and rhythm. Comparison places you in someone else's season and causes you to forget your own. Gently ask yourself, what are you ahead of and behind whom? Ahead and behind exist only when there is a race. Imagine two rivers flowing side by side through a valley. One does not rush because the other is wider. The other does not slow down because the first curves softly. They do not compete. They simply flow. When the mind begins to rank who is faster or slower, energy splits. One part moves forward while another looks sideways. Presence slowly dissolves. In Buddhist practice, growth does not come from measurement. It comes from full presence. Try a small practice now. Close your eyes and imagine yourself walking along a path at dusk. No signs, no spectators, only enough light for the next step. You do not need to know the destination. Just walk. When comparison ends, effort becomes cleaner. You stop chasing speed and begin cultivating depth. Joy no longer depends on position, and peace arrives when you stop giving your worth to the lives of others. 4. Pain is an experience, not who you are. There is a layer of suffering that lies deeper than comparison. It is the story you repeat about what has happened to you. In the teachings of the Buddha, pain is real and injustice is real. But when pain is held and retold again and again, it slowly becomes identity. At that point, suffering is no longer a temporary experience. It becomes the lens through which you see yourself and the world. Remember that a scar on the skin only marks what once happened. It is not the entire body. Yet the mind often mistakes the scar for the person. Every choice and every reaction becomes filtered through the old story. Life gradually narrows around familiar pain, and without noticing, you begin to protect it as if it were part of who you are. Buddhism does not deny pain, nor does it ask you to forget the past. The path of healing is not about erasing memory, but about releasing ownership of it. When you no longer live as the main character of the wounded story, the present moment begins to open. Responsibility no longer feels like a burden. It returns as strength in your own hands. There is a very gentle practice. Place one hand on your chest and feel the warmth that is already there. Softly bring to mind the old story you tell most often. Do not analyze it. Do not argue with it. Simply recognize it as a memory, not as you. As you exhale, loosen your grip on it, even slightly. That moment may carry a sense of emptiness. But this emptiness is not loss. It is space for something new to form. When the victim identity is set down, energy is no longer used for defense. It shifts toward direction. You stop asking who caused your pain and begin asking who you are becoming. From that place, peace enters your life quietly and with steadiness. 5. Dismantling false urgency. There is a quiet tension that many people carry every day. A feeling of always being late, always lacking time, even when there is no real danger in front of them. In the teachings of the Buddha, this urgency does not come from reality, but from the ego. When the mind believes it must always be faster, always on time, always ahead, it creates pressure to feel important. Urgency becomes a measure of worth, and peace slowly fades. Observe closely. When you rush, the breath becomes shallow. The body tightens. The mind reacts instead of choosing. Many decisions are made not from clarity, but from fear of being late. Buddhism offers a very quiet truth. Nothing real truly needs to be rushed. What belongs to you does not require panic to arrive. Stillness is often stronger than speed. Look up at the sky. Clouds do not run. They do not worry about their destination. Yet they move at the right time, dissolve at the right time, and return to their source. This is not laziness. This is alignment. When you live in constant urgency, the present moment becomes an obstacle instead of a home. Joy is postponed. Presence is traded for the feeling of being busy. There is a very simple practice. Right now, lengthen your exhale slightly. Feel time widening around you instead of closing in from all sides. Recognize that you are here, and this is enough. In that space, the body begins to soften. The mind slows. Decisions grow clearer. When false urgency is dismantled, you do not slow down life. You begin to meet it. Actions become intentional rather than reactive. Effort becomes sustainable instead of exhausting. And in that calm rhythm, you realize that time has never been chasing you. You only needed to stop running. 6. Stop overthinking to control life. When the rush outside begins to settle, another kind of noise often appears within. It is the endless stream of thoughts. Questions that repeat, scenarios that have not happened, decisions already made yet pulled back again for further review. In the teachings of the Buddha, this is not carefulness. It is fear wearing the mask of control. The mind believes that if it thinks enough, everything will be safer. Yet in truth, the more it thinks, the further safety moves away. Overthinking creates the feeling of doing something. It convinces you that you are preparing, preventing, being responsible. But beneath that movement lies the fear that if you let go, life will collapse. Buddhism points to a very different truth. When there is deep trust, you do not need to chase every possibility. Awareness does not require tension. It arises when the mind is allowed to rest. Imagine a bird with full wings, ready to fly. It stands on the branch for a long time, not because it cannot fly, but because it does not trust that the sky will hold it. Overthinking works the same way. You cling to each thought because you fear that letting go means falling. Yet it is this very clinging that exhausts you. There is a simple practice to return. Choose one thought that is repeating most often in your mind right now. Do not try to solve it. Do not push it away. Do not follow it to the end. Simply see it as a leaf floating on water. You do not need to push or pull. Just allow it to drift past your awareness. Observe the space that appears when you do not interfere. At first, the silence may feel unsettling, but if you stay long enough, something else reveals itself. When thinking stops trying to control, intuition begins to speak. Decisions grow simpler. Reaction is replaced by response. Energy, once trapped in mental loops, returns to the body as a steady sense of presence. When you stop overthinking to control life, you do not become careless. You become more trusting of yourself and of life. And within that trust, the mind finally learns how to rest. 7. Let go of emotional begging. After the noise of thinking begins to settle, another kind of emptiness may appear. It is the feeling of waiting, waiting for a message, waiting for a gentle word, waiting for a sign that you matter. In daily life, many people do not realize that they are emotionally begging in very quiet ways, not through obvious pleas, but through patient endurance, through giving more than is healthy, through the hope that if they are good enough, understanding enough, patient enough, they will finally be chosen. In the teachings of the Buddha, when validation becomes nourishment, dignity slowly begins to starve. You no longer stand upright in your own presence. You lean toward others to seek confirmation. Love then stops being a free offering and turns into a subtle negotiation. You give your presence in exchange for being seen. You adjust your needs just to keep the connection alive. And little by little, you move away from yourself. Imagine kneeling before an empty throne. You wait. You explain. You lower yourself. But no one is sitting there. No one responds. You offer your emotional power to absence. The pain is not rejection itself. The pain is that you have given your dignity to a place that cannot receive it. In Buddhism, compassion does not ask you to erase yourself. Understanding does not mean abandoning your own heart. When you constantly beg for emotional reassurance, you may believe you are loving. But in truth, you are forgetting to respect yourself. You seek to be chosen because you have forgotten that you are already whole. There is a very subtle sign of emotional begging. You are always the one who texts first. You are always the one who apologizes first. You are always the one who adjusts to keep the peace. Each action alone seems kind, but together, they slowly erode self-respect. You begin to believe that love must be paid for with endurance. The Buddha did not teach you to close your heart. He taught you not to abandon it. There is a very simple practice to return. Stand upright. Feel your spine supporting your entire body. Feel the natural steadiness that arises when you are not leaning toward anyone in order to exist. The breath deepens. The gaze steadies. In that moment, ask yourself one gentle question. If self-respect spoke before fear, what would it choose? The answer does not need to be immediate. You only need to listen. When you stop emotionally begging, something important happens. You do not become cold. You become clear. Some people will move closer because they can feel your wholeness. Others will fall away because they no longer receive silent sacrifice. Both outcomes are necessary truths. When you no longer ask to be chosen, you begin choosing yourself. Energy once spent waiting returns as a calm presence. Love stops being a transaction and becomes a sharing. You no longer need to prove your worth through pain. Dignity returns quietly, and with it comes a deep and steady peace that does not depend on anyone else. 8. Let go of old versions of yourself. When you stop emotionally begging and begin to stand firmly in self-respect, another form of resistance may appear. It is the clinging to a familiar image of yourself, a version that once helped you survive, that was once loved, once recognized. In the teachings of the Buddha, the most subtle attachment is not to others, but to the self across time. Maturity is not only about learning something new, it is also about allowing an old part of yourself to pass. Many people say they want to change, yet deep inside they fear becoming unfamiliar. They fear disappointing others. They fear losing the familiarity that once provided safety. The mind prefers a known cage to a freedom whose shape it does not yet recognize. But Buddhism reminds us that all life moves through impermanence. When you try to hold on to an outdated form, you do not preserve safety. You only delay the life that is trying to keep flowing. Imagine a snake that refuses to shed its skin. The skin that once protected it now begins to suffocate its breath. Change itself is not dangerous. The danger lies in remaining still when it is time to release. In the same way, old habits, old reactions, old roles that once helped you survive may now be blocking your growth. You are no longer living. You are merely maintaining an image. In Buddhism, letting go does not mean rejecting the past. It is gratitude without loyalty to what has expired. Maturity is a series of small funerals that happen quietly. No ceremony, no loud goodbyes, just the acceptance that you no longer need to carry that role. There is a very gentle practice to support this shift. Inhale slowly, as if fresh air were entering a room that has been closed for too long. Feel the renewal spread through your chest. As you exhale, imagine gently returning an old role. No judgment, no resistance, simply setting it down. When you let go of old versions of yourself, energy begins to return. Decisions grow clearer. Boundaries form more naturally. You no longer need to explain how you have changed. You begin to live it. Some people may no longer recognize you, but for the first time, you recognize yourself. And in that recognition, a new sense of peace appears. Quiet, unforced, simply true. 9. Let go of the need to always be right. After you have released old versions of yourself, another subtle challenge often appears within relationships. It is the need to be right, to prove, to defend your position to the very end. In the teachings of the Buddha, Attachment to right and wrong is one of the deepest sources of suffering for the ego. Because each time you must be right, you place the self above peace. Observe how you feel after winning an argument. There may be tension lingering in the chest, a clenched jaw, a stream of thoughts replaying the conversation again and again. Being right can bring a moment of satisfaction, but the cost is often connection. Buddhism reminds us that wisdom does not insist. It observes, it listens, and it chooses what nourishes harmony rather than what feeds the ego. Imagine winning a battle on a bridge that is on fire. You stand there holding sharp arguments in your hands. Yet beneath you, everything is collapsing. Relationships fracture. The body remains tight. The mind is not at rest. In that moment, did you truly win? Or did you exchange peace for a brief sense of superiority? In daily life, the need to be right often hides skillfully. You correct others when it is unnecessary. You continue arguing long after the topic has lost meaning. You prepare your response instead of truly listening. Each action seems reasonable on its own, but together they cause the heart to close. Buddhism teaches that wisdom does not lie in always having an answer. It lies in knowing when to release the answer. There is a very simple practice to detox this habit. The moment you feel challenged, relax your jaw. Notice the tension gripping the body. Allow one unfinished argument to dissolve without resolution. You do not lose when you let go. You are choosing peace. When you abandon the need to be right, something unexpected happens. Conversations become lighter. Listening deepens. Others may still disagree, but your body no longer pays the cost. Peace is no longer dependent on outcomes. It becomes a steady inner state. You speak when needed. You remain silent when it is enough. And in that restraint, wisdom begins to shine naturally and with compassion. 10. Stop absorbing other people's emotions. After you release the need to be right, another kind of exhaustion may still remain. You leave a conversation in silence, yet the body feels heavy. You wake up calm, but by the end of the day, other people's emotions seem to settle on you. In the teachings of the Buddha, sensitivity without grounding becomes a burden. Empathy without boundaries slowly causes the mind to lose its center. Many people believe that carrying others' emotions is love. You listen deeply. You feel intensely. You allow another person's sadness, anxiety, or anger to enter you as if it were your responsibility. But compassion does not require possession. Buddhism reminds us that loving kindness can be present without carrying what is not yours. When you take on what does not belong to you, inner clarity gradually fades. Imagine a sponge placed in dirty water. It absorbs everything around it without discrimination. Not because it is weak, but because it has no boundary. Human sensitivity works the same way. Without awareness, you absorb other people's emotions until you forget your own true state. You believe you are helping, but in truth, you are slowly exhausting yourself. Buddhism offers another path. Compassion is the ability to stay with others without losing yourself. There is a very gentle practice. Close your eyes and imagine a soft edge surrounding your body. Not a wall, not armor, just a gentle boundary that marks where you end and where others begin. Feel your breath moving in and out within that space. Emotions may touch you, but they do not stay. When you stop absorbing other people's emotions, empathy becomes cleaner. You can listen without depletion, be present without dissolving, and in that steadiness, peace remains with you after each connection instead of leaving you behind. 11. Let go of the need to be understood. When you have learned not to carry other people's emotions as your own, another subtle longing may still quietly remain. It is the need to be understood, to be seen correctly, to be interpreted accurately in someone else's mind. In the teachings of the Buddha, this craving does not arise from truth, but from the fear of isolation. The mind believes that if no one understands, we will be alone. Yet a deeper truth exists. What is real can stand without witnesses. There are paths in life that are not meant to be explained. They are meant to be walked. When you try to explain every choice, every transformation, every change within you, the life moving through you begins to distort. You speak more than necessary. You soften your truth so others can accept it. And little by little, you lose your own integrity. Imagine footprints along the shore. They appear clearly as someone walks by. But when the tide rises, they soften and disappear. The walker does not turn back to protect their footprints. They do not ask the ocean to remember them. They keep walking. In the same way, not everyone needs to understand your journey. Some people only touch it briefly. In daily life, the need to be understood often hides beneath goodwill. You explain yourself to avoid judgment. You defend your choices to keep harmony. You feel uneasy when silence is misunderstood. But Buddhism does not promise recognition. This path promises freedom. Freedom begins when you stop asking the world to read your story correctly. There is a very gentle practice. Step inward for a moment. Let what is misunderstood remain outside. Allow mystery to exist. When you no longer carry the burden of being interpreted accurately, the mind grows lighter. Actions become simpler. Peace no longer depends on being understood by others. It arises from the quiet alignment between you and the path you are walking. 12. Let go of mental noise. When you no longer need to be understood and allow mystery to exist, another layer of noise begins to reveal itself. It is the inner voice that constantly comments, judges, and worries. In the teachings of the Buddha, this noise is not sound, but the ongoing monologue about yourself. Society praises busyness and treats constant thinking as responsibility. Yet it is this very busyness that wears down awareness and covers over natural wisdom. Mental noise does not come only from big thoughts. It comes from small judgments about yourself, worries about what has not happened, and rehearsed inner dialogues repeated again and again. When the mind is always full, there is no space for truth to appear. Buddhism points out that silence is not emptiness. Silence is presence without distraction. It is the place where intuition quietly waits. Imagine a bowl of water stirred with mud. The more you try to stir it to see clearly, the cloudier it becomes. When the bowl is left alone, the mud settles by itself. Clarity does not require effort. It only requires not being disturbed. There is a very simple practice. Sit down and add nothing. No goal, no technique. Simply listen to the sounds around you without naming them. Notice thoughts appearing and disappearing without following them. Do not push them away. Do not hold on to them. When mental noise settles, another space opens. The breath deepens. The body softens. Attention becomes refined. Peace appears when the mind stops shouting. 13. Stop chasing closure. When the noise in the mind has quieted, many people are pulled into another form of restlessness. It is the need to have answers, to understand why a relationship ended, to know what truly happened. In the teachings of the Buddha, it is this demand for closure that allows wounds to linger. The mind believes that only when everything is explained will peace arrive. Yet there are doors in life that close without making a sound. No farewell, no complete explanation. Buddhism does not see this as failure. It is simply a cycle that is finished. When you keep knocking on a door that is already closed, you cannot move forward. You stand suspended between past and present, exhausted by waiting. Look at an autumn leaf falling from a branch. It does not demand a reason from the wind. It does not cling in order to be explained. It falls because the season has changed. Life is the same way. Many endings do not come because you did something wrong. They come because time has passed. When you accept this, energy begins to return to the present moment. In daily life, chasing closure often hides behind reasonable thinking. You replay every sentence. You wait for an apology. You hope for one final conversation so everything will make sense. But the longer you wait, the tighter the body becomes. The breath grows shallow. The heart remains unsettled. Buddhism reminds us that acceptance completes cycles, not answers. There is a very gentle practice. Exhale slowly and imagine yourself placing down one unfinished chapter. Feel how the body softens when it no longer has to wait for a conclusion. 14. Let go of the fear of missing out. When you stop chasing closure from the past, the mind may be pulled in another direction. It is the fear of missing out, a quiet sense that somewhere else something better is always happening. Another opportunity, another path, another choice that might bring more. In the teachings of the Buddha, this fear does not arise from a lack of opportunities, but from a loss of trust in the present moment. When you do not trust that what you have is enough, the mind begins to move sideways. Many people believe that FOMO is a sign of ambition, but beneath it lies insecurity. You look elsewhere to feel safe. You compare your lived experience with other images and feel as though you are always a step behind. Buddhism points out that peace does not come from having more options. Peace comes when you choose one thing and stay with it fully. Imagine a bee flying across a field of flowers. It touches each one briefly and then moves on. The flowers are many, but the nectar is never deep. Nourishment never truly arrives. The human mind works the same way. When driven by the fear of missing out, attention fragments, joy thins, presence dissolves. You are always halfway through every experience. In daily life, FOMO appears very subtly. You check what others are doing. You wonder whether a different choice would have been better. You feel restless even in moments of success or intimacy. Buddhism reminds us that when the mind leans into the future, the present becomes empty. And when the present is empty, nothing can bring lasting satisfaction. There's a very simple practice to return. Feel your feet touching the ground. Sense the weight of your body being supported. Bring attention to the breath as it enters and leaves. Allow yourself to arrive fully where you are standing. There is no need to search for something else. No need to compare. Just be here. When the fear of missing out is released, something gentle happens. Presence deepens. You listen more clearly. You savor more completely. Life no longer feels like a race, but a place you inhabit. You do not need to experience everything to feel whole. Living one moment fully is enough for peace to take root. 15. Let go completely. When you have released each small layer of attachment, one final question appears. What happens if you let go of everything? Not just a habit, a relationship, or a thought, but the very way you are tightening around life. In the teachings of the Buddha, letting go is not giving up. Letting go is ending resistance to what is already flowing. Suffering does not come because you care too little. It comes because you hold too tightly. Many people fear letting go because they believe that without control, everything will collapse. They hold on to outcomes, images, expectations as if these were responsibilities. Yet a deeper truth exists. Nothing essential requires strain in order to survive. When you must grip something tightly to keep it, it is likely that it never truly belonged to you. Imagine standing in a gentle rain. If your hands are clenched, you will not feel a single drop. When your palms open, the rain naturally touches you. Life works the same way. What is real does not arrive through force. It comes when you are ready to receive. Buddhism teaches that an empty hand is the one that can receive. When you stop being busy holding on, life begins to respond. Letting go completely does not happen in a dramatic moment. It unfolds quietly, in choosing not to react, in choosing not to interfere, in allowing things to be as they are. Each time you do not intervene, one layer of tension dissolves. A new space opens. There is a very simple practice. Open your palms in front of you. Feel the lightness in your fingers. Relax your shoulders and your jaw. Notice that the body does not need to hold anything. Now choose one thing you are gripping most tightly. An outcome, a fear, a desire. You do not need to push it away. Simply loosen your hold, just a little. When you let go completely, effort turns into flow. Decisions become simpler. Reactions soften. Life no longer feels forced to follow your will, but begins to move with you. You do not need to win in order to feel enough. You do not need to prove anything in order to feel at peace. Peace is no longer something to achieve. It is what remains when there is nothing left to hold. And in that emptiness, freedom quietly reveals itself. When you look back on the journey you have just taken, you may see that peace does not come from adding more things. It comes from quietly reducing relationships that leak your energy, reducing the need to explain, to compare, to always be right. Reducing the habit of wearing pain as identity. Reducing rushing, overthinking, emotional begging, and carrying the emotions of others. Reducing the need to be understood. Reducing inner noise. Reducing the demand for answers. Reducing the fear of missing out. And finally, reducing the tight grip you hold on life itself. In the spirit of Buddhism, clarity is not created through effort, but through subtraction. When the mind grows lighter, the world becomes more precise. You do not need to let go of everything at once. Simply choose one thing that feels heaviest today. Let it go quietly and allow peace to return.